Hello and welcome to Angry Andy Reviews. Typically, January is seen as the dump month of Hollywood, where no major tentpole movie releases happen, and the movies that are released are genuinely seen as being those that will garner both low commercial revenue and low critical reception. Though there are exceptions to that rule. We do have City of God, Cloverfield and Taken that were all released in January that all did pretty well, and the fact that Hollywood itself is looking to shift away to a more year-round release calendar that is more viable for franchise releases. Some of the January releases are downright terrible to an anger-inducing point, and today I will be looking at the 5 most anger-inducing January movie releases ever.
Angry Andy. Angry Andy Reviews. Angry Andy. Angry Andy. Angry Andy Reviews. 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 Don't make me destroy you.
To start us off, number 5. Monster Trucks. Released in 2017, Monster Trucks was a monster comedy action film centred around a junkyard worker who discovers a strange creature that feeds on oil and can make vehicles move by entering the chassis. A statement on both environmental issues surrounding the continuation of using fossil fuels and fracking. Its brief flashes of well-meaning and genuine fun were overshadowed by a meandering and contrived script riddled with overblown action sequences proving that a concept alone does not make a compelling film. Noisy, messy and disappointingly thin, it had more in common with a low-budget rip-off Transformers cash-in than anything worthwhile or enough to form its own identity. It went on to gross 64 million worldwide against its 125 million budget and ended up losing the studio over 120 million in total after advertising. The advertising campaign was squarely aimed at families, but those families simply didn't turn up. It became the very essence of the phrase a box office bomb, cementing the idea of the January dump month graveyard. Reviews didn't help it whatsoever either. It currently holds a Rotten Tomatoes score of just 32% from critics and an audience score of 51%, which isn't bad, but it certainly isn't great. Coming in unashamedly at number 4, Mordecai. Mordecai is horrendous, utterly horrendous, as ill-fitting a film as you are likely to find. Its main sin was that as a comedy film, it just wasn't funny in any way, shape or form. Released in 2015 and starring an ensemble cast featuring Paul Bettany, Gwyneth Paltrow, Jeff Goldblum, Ewan McGregor and led by Johnny Depp no less, it was an art heist caper in the style of the Pink Panther films, but completely lacking in anything of the charm, charisma and quality that those films had. It was strange, just utterly strange in both style and execution. The jokes failed to land, the plot became a chore, and the performances oddly resembled an exercise in who can overact the most, pretty much what I'm doing here right now, to cover the cracks of its own indulgences. It grossed a worldwide total of 47.3 million against a production budget of 60 million, but in its 3rd week of release in North America, it was pulled from 2,395 cinemas, a drop rate of over 90%, which at the time left the film as the 10th biggest theatre drop in cinematic history. Absolutely astonishing. Reviews were savage from both critics and audiences alike, sitting at a 12% critic score with an audience score of 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. It is a nightmare of a film to get through. I recently tried to rewatch it, only to turn it off half an hour in. Laborious, flat and utterly charmless Mordecai is surely one of those films buried away in Johnny Depp's garden, hoping that the flowers will grow over it so that he can forget all about it. Number 3, Movie 43. Movie 43. Oh God, this film reminds me of that music video that Gal Gadot did with all those celebrities of that John Lennon song during the first lockdown in 2020. This film is the equivalent of that. It stars practically everyone in the known universe. Released in 2013, it was billed as an anthology piece featuring 14 different storylines, each uniquely cast and each featuring its own director. The warning signs were there. The sheer fact that over a 10-year period its script was rejected by every single major studio until it was bought by Relativity Media. Then it had countless troubles with casting and general production. It was a bubbling mess. And so, when it was finally served, it reeked of a ham-fisted, pushy and disingenuous vehicle to cash in on star power alone. The film has so little in the way of purpose and meaning that I cannot literally be bothered to go into detail regarding the plot, themes or general performances, because it all falls to insignificance due to the manic lackluster intentions of its comedy, which is just as insulting as it is unfunny. Some of the biggest names in Hollywood were involved here. Hugh Jackman, to name but one. You had Richard Gere there as well. But this film is a wet flannel run over in the street. Absolutely panned by critics as one of the worst films ever made. The film was expected to make around 8 or 9 million upon its debut. Its weekend opening gross saw it make just shy of 5 million, which, as clear as day, was well short of industry expectations, finishing with a worldwide total of just 32 million. Boring, insipid, an utter waste of time and patience, Movie 43 has apparently recuperated all costs thanks to the marvel that is rental and online streaming services. For me, however, if you haven't seen it, I would honestly avoid it like the plague. Just run away. If somebody wants to show you it, don't ever talk to them again. Number 2, Season of the Witch. Poor Nicolas Cage. It pains me to have to include him on this list, but Season of the Witch is such a terrible movie. Released in 2011, the Cage himself stars as a crusader who returns home to find his homeland ruined by the plague, where 2 church elders have accused a girl of being a witch who is responsible for the affliction and the devastation. Cage and his companion, played by Ron Perlman, are tasked with escorting her to a monastery where she will be cleansed of the curse to help heal the land. Sounds alright, to be sure, but the final product ended up being... it ended up just lacking in every single way possible. Cheaply made for the size, scope and effects needed to make it work, the film looked as every much a B-movie as you could possibly imagine, and not in the good way. Not only that, but the scripting and dialogue was obnoxiously dull and wooden, to the point whereby any form of improvisation or simply just going off script would have elevated this film beyond its bland standing. Interestingly enough, the film completely abandons its premise in favour of schlocky action when at times its darker and more subtle moments were working in its favour. Overblown and just plain silly. The kind of silly that makes you raise your eyebrows and turn to the person sitting next to you in utter confusion. Originally, it was pulled from its release in March 2010. The film was then pushed into January 2011 and given a dreaded PG-13 rating, which likely turned off a fair few people. It did, however, amass a worldwide total of 91.6 million, which isn't terrible, given that the film had a budget of just 40 million, well, that we know of anyway, but that doesn't negate from the reception both critically and from its audience, with it hovering at an 11% critical score and 30% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Fundamentally garbage. This is another film that sadly you must avoid wasting your time upon. Coming in finally at number 1 is my most anger-inducing film release of January, Meet the Spartans. Where do I begin with Meet the Spartans? Meet the chuffing Spartans. Do I really need to say much about it when it's all so abundantly obvious? Well, I guess for the purposes of this video I actually do, don't I? Meet the Spartans is the very essence of a dump movie, except it wasn't dumped. It was purposely designed to release in January because they know that certain nuggets would go and watch it. It's rotten and obnoxious to the core. It's a carnival ride of trivial pop culture references that rips off whatever semi-decent movie was released at the time. In this case, it was 300, unfortunately. Similarly with epic movie, date movie, superhero movie, the list goes on, and people actually watched these bags of arse. It completely baffles me. Its comedy was derived from pastiche of, look at us make fun of this film that was pretty good, isn't that fun? Except it was never funny in the least, lacking any form of commentary needed to make a spoof work, or at least appear respectable to anyone who cared to think during the film. Meet the Spartans instead used tired, lackluster jokes, cheap boob and knob laughs, and downright offensive stereotypes to fill out the 87 minutes running time, which in itself was as insulting as anything else. This awful cinematic cow shit was marketed with muscular men and overtly sexualized women, clearly attempting to find an audience in adolescents who simply wouldn't know any better, and most of them, to be fair, didn't. And to a degree it worked. Slap Carmen Electra on the box and watch those teenagers roll on in. Top banter.
Clever girl.
I worked in a cinema when this film was released in 2008, and to this day I have no idea what drove me to watch it. Morbid curiosity, or indeed Carmen Electra.
Stupid boy.
Who really knows? All I know is that the stain of this skid mark is etched upon my brain for all eternity. It grossed an obscene $84 million worldwide, but critical response sees it languishing as IMDb's number 22 on the bottom 100 movies list, with a 2% critical score on Rotten Tomatoes and a 25% audience score. This film isn't by no means the worst of the January releases, but this one riles me up something fierce because I actually watched this one. I've watched all of these films, and each of them has left a stain on my consciousness, on my conscience as well. I cannot scrub them out, no matter how much soap I use. But there you go. This has been my 5 most anger-inducing January movie releases. I'm sure you have your own. If you do, please do leave a comment in the comments section down below. I am interested to hear what films really rile you up, and they don't just have to be from January, just in general. Please do share with me. If you liked this video, please do like it and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video as well, for more movie reviews, opinions and collectible unboxings. I'm going to go and watch something good to try and hold back the tears. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.